First off, let me apologize for using the antiquated term diva, but that's what WWE used to market their female stars as, whether they were a backstage interviewer, bikini contest participant, or, their actual women's champion. As with their male counterparts, countless women have appeared on WWE television in various roles over the years, and, well, some certainly live longer in the memory than others. Importantly, all of the women on this list contributed to the product in some way, and most of them gave it a good go, but they weren't around for long and you would be hard-pressed to pick them out of a lineup. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 WWE Divas you probably don't remember. Join us. Number 10, Amy Weber. I should probably warn you early on that there are going to be a few women who came to WWE via the Diva search on this countdown, where she was the oldest entrant at a positively ancient 34 and ultimately finished 4th. WWE signed her up anyway, as they did Maria, Joy, and Michelle McCool, because John Laurinaitis was in charge and, well, he had a thing, didn't he? Amy was around briefly as a member of WWE champion JBL's cabinet stable, taking on the role of the Texans' image consultant. She participated in a few segments and promos and had one match against Joy, which she won by forfeit. Then she suddenly disappeared, deciding to quit the company during an overseas tour after some of the SmackDown crew started ribbing her about an old modeling picture of hers appearing on an advertisement for a gentleman's establishment. Somewhat hilariously, she tried to quit to her fictional boss until Bradshaw duly informed her that he was probably the wrong man to be talking to. Not so hilariously, in 2020, Amy, who is now enjoying a successful career in real estate, gave an interview alleging harassment and bullying on the same trip by Randy Orton and Edge. Number 9, BB. Kathy Dingman got her start in pro wrestling the old-fashioned way. No, not by working her way up through the territories, but getting spotted working at a Hooters by a bunch of randy old grapplers. She agreed to manage them, caught the wrestling bug, and after a few years dabbling in the indies, was signed by WWE in 1999. Dingman certainly had the right, proportions for the times, and was brought in as an EMT character. She was originally going to portray a nurse called Connie Lingus because everything back then was an innuendo, bro. BB, aka Barbara Bush, participated in some classic swimming pool and evening gown matches and was a contestant in the infamous Miss Rumble 2000 swimsuit contest, while also fulfilling her duties as a medical technician. Gracing WWE screens for only a few months, she was released after one of her more memorable moments, being powerbombed through a table by Bubba Ray Dudley. Wait a second, hey look, there's Daniel Bryan! A few months later, she showed up in WCW for a minute as Papaya, the valet and girlfriend of Kwee-Wee, which must have annoyed her actual shoot boyfriend at the time, one Mr. Bob Corholly. Post-WCW, Dingman showed up in early day TNA as Taylor Vaughn and then basically disappeared from the business. Number 8, Sherry. Unlike a lot of the other forgotten divas of yesterday who didn't know anything about the wacky world of sports entertainment, Sherry was actually a longtime fan of the business, citing Miss Elizabeth as her inspiration and paid her dues the old-fashioned way. Getting into wrestling in the late 90s, Cherry, as Cara Slice, wrestled and valeted on the independent scene for a good while before she began working for OVW, eventually signing a contract with WWE's then developmental league. Paired up with Greaser's Deuce and Domino, Cherry matched their 50s throwback look by coming to the ring wearing roller skates and chewing bubblegum while decked out in the outfits of the time. It was anachronistic, obviously, but it somehow worked, and the trio got their main roster call-up, debuting on SmackDown as the team chosen to dethrone long-running tag team champions Paul London and Brian Kendrick. A great start, but after they dropped the belts, they tapered off and subsequently split from Cherry, leaving her in limbo. And I bet she loved that, being all into the 1950s and everything. People in the 50s did love limbo, right? Those mad bastards. Anyway, Cherry became a babyface, had some short feuds with Maurice and Natalia, and then was released, subsequently leaving the business to work at the Five and Dime. Number 7, Courtney Taylor. Look, if you weren't watching ECW in 2009, and dear God, why would you be unless you were Zack Ryder's dad or something, you probably aren't going to know who Courtney Taylor is. To be honest, even if you were watching ECW in 2009, that name still likely won't ring any bells. Courtney Taylor was a backstage interviewer for the Third Brand, and per a quick search on the WWE Network, asked questions to the likes of Tommy Dreamer, Paul Burchill, and Tiffany, who is another former WWE diva you perhaps can't place, though she did have a hell of a stellar run in TNA as Taryn Terrell. A member of the Hooters Hall of Fame, a real thing that actually exists, Courtney Taylor had been in developmental territory Florida Championship Wrestling for a while, where she actually worked in matches alongside future stars such as AJ Lee, Eve Torres, Tamina, and the Bellas. In FCW, she also worked as the valet for Alex Riley, being the prom queen cheerleader type to his high school jock, and performed under a few different names such as Beverly, Daisy, and Wesley Holiday. Outside of her time on ECW, Taylor made an appearance on a Christmas-themed edition of Raw, chasing a man in a tiger costume through the arena while trying to attack him with a golf club. She was released in April 2010. Number 6, Joy. Look, I'm not saying WWE were basically coming up with any possible reason to get more attractive females on their television show during the Diva Search years, but I think the fact that they had third place Joy Giovanni debut on SmackDown as a massage therapist and then put her to work as a bell ringer speaks volumes. To be fair, they did put her into an actual storyline not too long after, as she began an on-screen association with Big Show, first as a friend and then as his best gal. Joy, along with Diva Search nemesis Amy Weber, became involved in the feud between Show, JBL, and Kurt Angle, which led to such scenes as Kurt Angle walking in on Joy in the shower and later kidnapping her and placing her tied and gagged into the boot of JBL's limo. The feud was dropped when Weber gave notice, though Joy continued to receive a push and won the 2005 Diva Rookie of the Year competition at No Way Out, beating Michelle McCool, Lauren Jones, and Rochelle Lowry, with Giovanni gaining 65% of the audience votes. After that, she showed up here and there before being released due to budget cuts. She returned to WWE for a night at WrestleMania 25 as a participant in the Miss WrestleMania Battle Royal. A fitting end. Number 5, Muffy. You remember Simon Dean, don't you? The OTT fitness guru, played by former ECW star Nova, who would berate the audience and his fellow WWE superstars for being out of shape. Alright, now imagine that, but it's done by a woman and somehow even worse. That was Muffy, the personal trainer of then women's champion Stephanie McMahon. Muffy was portrayed by Karen Moa, a stunt performer who had worked on shows like Baywatch and Ally McBeal before deciding to give wrestling a shot and enrolling in the California-based UPW school. She got her big break when WWE were at their hottest, but unfortunately for Moa, Muffy didn't stay around for long, making a few televised appearances before disappearing. Not long after that, Moa was released from her WWE contract and returned to the stunt world, where she has been in demand ever since. In later interviews, Moa revealed that her short time in the company wasn't entirely pleasant, mainly due to having to share a locker room with China. According to Moa, the ninth wonder of the world resented her presence and talked down to her. For example, one time after returning backstage from doing her segments, Muffy found her clothes cut to pieces, though she neglected to confront her supposed tormentor. Number 4, Rochelle Lowry. Rochelle Lowry! You think I made this name up, don't you? You think that perhaps I stole it from the minor character in a little scene sitcom, don't you? You think I took the name of my first crush and my favourite teacher, Mrs. Lowry, put them together and just imagined a WWE diva out of thin air, don't you? Well, you are all wrong, and you need to leave me alone because Rochelle Lowry was real. She was realer than real. The realist. Look, I'm waffling alright because there's really not that much to say about Rochelle, a former glamour model who was offered a contract in 2004 and then made enemies backstage due to her lack of product knowledge. A young and immature Randy Orton in particular took offense to Lowry not knowing who he was and BAM! Hit her with an RKO out of nowhere! Alright, I did make that up. He actually just told her he hated her and her native Canada before destroying her belongings by putting tanning lotion and baby oil in her bag. She moved from Raw to SmackDown but didn't do too much of note outside of some filler segments. In fact, if fans do remember her, it's usually for the explosive interview she gave following her early 2005 release. Number 3, Rebecca Dipietro. Add another to the WWE CW interviewers you never knew existed pile. A classic mid-2000s WWE diva story, Rebecca was a model who had appeared in the pages of Playboy, Maxim, and a bunch of other top-shelf magazines before auditioning for the Diva Search. She made the last 8 for the 2006 version and finished 3rd, but did enough to convince decision-makers that she was worth a shot and was hired. Rebecca reported to Deep South Wrestling, though she wasn't there for long before being called up to work for the relaunched ECW WCW brand as an interviewer. At the time, it was rumored that the reason for her quick promotion was due to the recommendation of Batista, who she was dating. The animal apparently wanted a road buddy to keep him company, and, well, who are WWE to tell Big Dave no? During her time on ECW, Dipietro was a competent enough interviewer and did other things when needed, such as act as a lumberjill in the Women's Championship match at Cyber Sunday 2006. After 6 months on the road, however, Rebecca either got sick of the grind or perhaps broke up with Batista because she was released, supposedly at her own request. Number 2, Amy Zidian. I don't have too many heroes, but the ones I do have mean a lot to me. Andy Kaufman, Jim Henson, and Mr. Blobby were all lovable geniuses in their own right, but they pale in comparison to former WWE diva Amy Zidian. Oh, you don't remember? Amy was another participant in the 2006 version of the Diva Search, finishing dead last, but giving a certain gravel-voiced talent relations, ace enough stiffies to earn herself a contract anyway. Zidian was then sent to FCW for a cup of coffee, at least I assume that's what she went there for, since she didn't learn anything about WWE, and then showed up on SmackDown as the valeting girlfriend of Jimmy Wang Yang. Amy actually pitched the idea herself directly to Vince McMahon and was on TV a few weeks later rocking the cowboy boots and Daisy Dukes. And then she was gone, not because creative didn't have anything for her or budget cuts, but because she managed to piss off half the locker room. As well as insulting Crystal Marshall's hair extensions and questioning what Vicky Guerrero was doing in the business, Amy also talked back to, of all people, Stephanie McMahon, asking her who she felt she was to be giving her advice during a pre-tape. Like I said, my hero. Number 1, Ryan Shamrock. 19-year-old aspiring model Alicia Webb became a WWE superstar practically by accident. She got into the company via a mutual friend of Bruce Pritchard who saw her photo and inquired about her coming in for one shot. Initially rejecting the proposal since she wasn't a fan of the business, she eventually relented and showed up at ringside in January of 1999 as Ryan Shamrock, sister of Ken. One shot turned to 2, which turned into several, and before long she was working there full time. Webb managed to pack a lot into her short stay in WWE, having an on-screen relationship with Val Venus and then forming the vengeful Pretty Mean Sisters group with Terry and Jacqueline after the big Valboski dumped her. At one point, the world's most dangerous man was approached to do an incest storyline with his kayfabe sister, which he outright refused to do and would have been complicated by the fact that he was actually dating the woman playing his sibling in real life. Ryan was gone by the summer, but as was the style of the time, quickly showed up in WCW, where she acted as Symphony, the manager of the Maestro. Post-WCW, she remained involved in the business, appearing in early day TNA and then for AAA in Mexico.